So if you're a manager, you know this feeling, right? You get a fantastic new hire, maybe an intern, an apprentice, a new junior, and you are so excited. But then that big question hits you. How do I actually train them? How do you take them from being this curious beginner on day one to a confident, fully contributing member of the team? Well, today, we are breaking down a really simple but powerful framework that's designed to do exactly that.
Here's the game plan. First, we're going to talk about a super common problem called the onboarding trap. Then we'll introduce the solution, the mastery path, and we'll walk through its 3 main phases. And finally, we'll talk about how you can take this whole idea and actually put it into practice with your team.
All right, let's dive right into that first piece, the onboarding trap. This is where so many really well-intentioned training plans just kind of fall apart, leaving everyone feeling pretty frustrated. Does this sound familiar to you? Without a clear plan, new team members can end up in one of two places. They're either stuck in this fuzzy training phase forever, never really getting to own anything, or they get thrown into the deep end way too soon and are just left to sink or swim. Honestly, neither of those is a recipe for success. It's just demoralizing.
So how do we get around that trap? Well, this is where the mastery path comes in. It is such a simple, elegant framework that creates a clear, intentional journey from just watching to taking full ownership.
And the real magic here is its simplicity. By laying out the whole journey right from the start, it just eliminates all the guesswork. Think about it. A new hire knows exactly what's expected of them at every single stage, and you, as the manager, have a clear playbook to guide them. It just gets everyone on the same page from day one.
And here it is. This is the entire path in a nutshell. It's just 3 clear phases. First, you have the shadow phase. Then you move into the supervised phase. And finally, the goal, the independent phase. So let's break down what actually goes on in each one.
Okay, let's take that first step, the shadow phase. This is all about building a really solid foundation, not by doing anything, but through focused, structured observation.
Now, let's be really clear on this. During the shadow phase, the new hire's job is not to do the work. Their job is to absorb it. They're literally there to watch, to listen, and to learn from the pros on your team so they can understand the how and the why before they ever touch a real project.
So this brings up the first big question for you as a manager. You can't just tell someone, hey, go shadow somebody. You've got to be intentional. So how are you going to define what this actually looks like for your team and for this new person?
To really make this work, you've got to get specific. What are the absolute must-see meetings they need to be in? Is it the daily stand-up, the weekly planning session? What key workflows are just essential for them to see in action? And, just as important, what's the time frame? A week? 2 weeks? Defining this stuff really sets them up for success later.
All right, so once that foundation of observation was rock solid, it's time to move into phase 2, supervised action. This is the exciting part, where we go from watching to actually doing.
Okay, the training wheels are officially on. Your new hire starts to take on real tasks, but, and this is so important, they do it with direct supervision and a really strong feedback loop. This gives them a chance to try things, maybe even make a few mistakes in a safe environment, and learn directly from the outcomes.
And just like before, the success of this phase comes down to how you structure it. You can't just say, okay, start working now. You really have to think through the mechanics of that supervision. So what are those perfect starter tasks? Things that are real work but maybe have a limited scope, like fixing a small bug or drafting an internal memo. And then, what's your exact process for review? Is it a daily check-in, a formal code review? Defining that feedback loop is probably the most critical part of this whole phase.
This visual really shows the big shift that's happening. See, in the supervised phase, the support is super high, work gets checked all the time, and the scope is small. But as they move toward being independent, that support level drops. Work gets checked at major milestones instead of constantly, and they start taking on the full scope of their role. It's this gradual release of responsibility that builds real competence and confidence.
And that brings us to the ultimate goal of this entire journey, phase 3, full independence. This is all about defining what true, confident ownership actually looks like in their job.
Let's be really clear about what independent means. It doesn't just mean they're left alone. It means they've proven they have the skill and the competence to own the core responsibilities of their job from start to finish. They've officially graduated. But here's the million-dollar question for every manager, right? It can feel so subjective. How do you really know when someone is ready to go solo?
The secret is to define it before they even start. You have to spell it out. What are the objective goals? Is it shipping a feature all by themselves? Handling a big client call without any help? Maybe for a writer, it's publishing an article that needs almost no editing? When you set these clear, measurable goals, you take all the guesswork out of it. The decision becomes fair and obvious for everyone.
Okay, we've locked the entire path, from start to finish. Now, let's wrap this up by talking about how you actually put this into practice and define what done looks like for your own team.
I just love this because it's so beautifully simple. You're done. You've successfully implemented this when you have sat down and written out what each of these 3 phases looks like for a specific role. That's it. That simple act turns a vague idea into a real, actionable plan.
And the payoff is huge. You totally avoid that awful stuck or sinking trap. You create crystal clear expectations for everybody. You build a repeatable, scalable system for success. And maybe most importantly, you have an objective way to decide when someone is truly ready to fly on their own.
So let's leave it right there. The framework is here, it's clear, it's powerful. Once you take the time to define your own mastery path, the only question left is, who are you ready to guide on their journey?